Hey guys. Let's ask Kamala how her debate prep is going.
How's debate prep? Madam Vice President, how is debate prep going?
She just proved how different she was from Joe Biden.
That's right.
She just
walked straight.
She got right up those stairs.
Yep.
Amazing. Apparently, she just told reporters moments ago that her prep's doing well. Starting tomorrow, she'll be holed up in Pennsylvania for 5 days of debate camp, getting pointers on how to rattle Donald on the national stage, as well as figure out how to unburden herself from her boss, Joe. According to NBC, quote, some on Harris's team are taking the approach that she may have to respectfully but forcefully lay blame for some problems like the Afghanistan withdrawal squarely at Biden's feet. So, Jesse, she has to draw distinctions from Joe. That should be easy, right? Just bring a mirror and put it under her nose so you can see it fog up.
That's good. So she has to differentiate herself from Joe Biden. But the more she does that, the more she starts agreeing with Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So Trump's just going to be like, yeah, Kamala, we agree. So why are you running against me? You know, why didn't you just tell Joe to do what we talked about right here? Why didn't you just tell him that the last 4 years he was right?
Welcome back to Uncensored. Douglas Murray and Cenk Uygur are on bitterly opposing sides of a debate on Israel's war in Gaza. Millions have watched them passionately articulate their cases on this show, but never together. So tonight, on our final show of the year, we've invited these two big brains to debate the big outstanding questions on this conflict. How does the war end? Will Israel face repercussions for the scale of its response to October the 7th? Has it committed war crimes? What is the future, if any, for Hamas, for Gaza, and for the prospects of a true Palestinian state? Most importantly, how do we get to peace? Well, I'm now joined by the author of The War on the West, Douglas Murray, and by Young Turks founder and Democratic presidential challenger, Cenk Uygur. Welcome to both of you. So I've interviewed you both a lot in this war, but not together. And Cenk, I know you felt the other night when you were debating with other people, it didn't really get into a debate, and I think that's fair enough. And what I'd like to today really is to be almost a referee, if you like, between you two to articulate your views and to see if we can reach any points of consensus. So in that spirit, let me start with you, Douglas. I think you're back in Israel. Is that right?
Yes, I'm in Israel tonight, yeah.
Today it was a sea of other stories have come out in the last few days, which have been concerning, I think. For anyone who, like me, believes that Israel has not just a moral duty to defend itself, but has a fundamental right to do so after what happened on October the 7th. And I've said that clearly from the start. It's always been, for me, the issue of proportionality. And it seems that in the last few days, there have been a number of incidents which really question whether Israel is being precise, as it says it is, or indiscriminate. And I would cite the killing of the 3 hostages. I would cite the killing of the 2 women outside the Catholic Church. I would cite the President of the United States saying that they're using indiscriminate bombing, and so on. Do you, Douglas, notwithstanding your full throttle support of Israel, does anything that's been happening make you think Israel needs to execute this war differently?
No, and I think that most of the people who think they know how to execute this war have never executed a war. Indeed, most people who think they know how the IDF should be running this conflict have never been near a conflict. I'm in Israel tonight. I was in Gaza again yesterday. And the examples that you give, by the way, Piers, I don't see why they show any need to prosecute the war itself differently. I mean, just to take one of them, the first example you give, the absolutely tragic, awful shooting of these 3 hostages as they were coming out. But, you know, some of the spin that's been put on that in the world, apart from the glee, of course, that Israel's enemies can't help expressing, some of the spin on that is almost as if it shows the IDF is sort of so brutal that it even kills Hamas hostages who are Israeli. I just think this is another example of the international media and others just having this astounding lack of empathy for the Israeli people. Can you imagine what it was like for those soldiers who were in Gaza, knowing that at any point there are snipers, there are booby traps everywhere, people coming out of tunnels that they've built at British and American taxpayer expenses and attacking them? Can you imagine what it was like for the soldiers who, in that terrible moment, made the life-changing mistake of shooting 3 people who turned out to be Hamas hostages?
But why would they? But Douglas, on that, why would they shoot anyone who was shirtless and waving an SOS flag? I mean, why would whoever they were, whether they were Israeli hostages or whether they thought they were Palestinians, why would anyone shoot anyone who comes out like that? That's my point. That'll
be a matter for the inquiry into it. But, look, it's hardly as if they'd have wanted to have done that. What this demonstrates is, in this incredibly close conflict, in a heavily built-up area, with people coming out from all sides, firing, shooting, detonating, people make mistakes. Of course they do. That's just a human reality of war, horrible as it is. I don't think it shows in any way that Israel is prosecuting this war wrongly. As for the main issue of the war is to destroy Hamas. No Israeli of left or right or centre believes anymore after October the 7th they can live beside Hamas. Hamas has been given the statelet of Gaza. It was given it in 2006, voted in, then killed their fellow Palestinians in a coup, killed Fatah rivals, and they've run the Gaza for almost 18 years now. And they've produced a new generation of people whose main aim in life, it seems, according to their textbooks and their classes, is to regard Jews as enemies who should be killed. This is just an unbelievable waste, a waste of life on every side. But apart from anything else, a waste of those Palestinian lives, of children who grew up under Hamas's rule, if you can call it that, who have been indoctrinated into becoming sociopaths by a psychopathic terror organization, Hamas.
All right, Cenk, you've been listening to that. Is there anything that Douglas said that you agree with?
No, nothing.
Not even about the way Hamas has presided over Gaza in the last 18 years?
Yeah. So that's a weapon of mass distraction. It's Israel doing genocide on the Palestinians right now. And there's IDF soldiers singing and in video that the IDF has confirmed about how they're going to wipe out the seed of Amalek. That is a verse in the old Hebrew Bible that talks about exterminating Amalek. So they're talking about genocide against Palestinians. Benjamin Netanyahu has also talked about wiping out Amalek. These are open calls for genocide. What I find stunning, Douglas mentioned stunning lack of empathy. There's 20,000 dead people in Palestine right now in Gaza. Over 8,000 of them are children. When 36 Israeli children were killed by Hamas, the world cried out, and I was brokenhearted over it. 36 poor kids dead in Israel. Now there's over 8,000 dead kids in Gaza. You want to talk about a stunning lack of empathy. 6,400 women slaughtered in Gaza. You want to talk about terrorism? They're dropping unguided bombs, 2,000-pound bombs. Every one of those bombs is an act of terrorism. And the stunning lack of empathy towards Palestinian lives is disgusting. But I want to be clear, it is not shared by all Israelis. The dad of one of the hostages who was killed went on Israeli television and said, "Stop killing them." And he didn't mean the hostages. He meant the Palestinians.
All right, but Jake, let me just jump in. But before I go back to Douglas for response to this.
Let me reply to that, Piers.
Yeah, I will let you reply to that. On this issue of genocide, do you accept, though, that Hamas's whole raison d'etre when it comes to Israel is genocide? They want to eradicate Israel and kill as many Jews as they can. I mean, they've made no secret of this.
Yeah, so this is really important. So I have no sympathy for Hamas. So I'm not interested in defending Hamas. I think that's nothing but a distraction. Because right now they're not fighting Hamas. They're just killing Palestinian
civilians. Well, they're
civilians.
also killing Hamas terrorists. They are. I mean, they're killing thousands of them.
Barely. No, wait a minute. Barely. But let's go to your main point, okay? So the main point is, well, Hamas threatens X, Y, and Z and has killed 1,200 people on October 7th. So that is why we have to all worry about what Hamas might
Well, it's
do
not, I
in
don't think
regards
it's
to
simple as
trying
that.
to... Hold
No, it's
on,
something- it's
let me
something-
finish the
Cenk,
point.
it's
Let
something
me
they
finish
actually
the
done.
point. Let me finish the point. And what they might do if they had infinite power, the kind of power that Israel has. Meanwhile, Israel is actually doing the genocide, is actually preventing a Palestinian state and saying you are not allowed to exist. And if you dare try to exist, we'll kill
Okay, let me go to
20,000
Douglas.
of your children and women.
All right, Douglas, respond to that.
Several things. First of all, anyone who uses the term genocide in this context simply doesn't know what they're talking about or is a malevolent actor. I don't know if Mr. Uyghur's traveled at all in his life, how far he's traveled, how many conflicts he's seen, but I'd have guessed none. And you clearly know nothing about this particular conflict, and you've obviously seen none of it. The genocide that you describe is such a smear and a libel against the Jewish state. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, I'm sure it could, but it doesn't. It doesn't remotely want to. And people like you and other pro-Palestinian propagandists have spent years claiming that Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza. By the way, the weirdest thing about this claim is that the population of the Gaza has grown by 1 million in the last 15 or so years. So if Israel was trying to carry out a genocide, it's either the worst perpetrator of genocide ever or uniquely poor at performing that task. None of the stats support that ridiculous claim. It's such a weird smear and a libel of Israel. Secondly, of course, you've just rattled off Hamas figures, as every one of your kind always does. Thirdly, you said that the world cried. A world cried. You said that the people like you who cover for the Palestinian extremists. Thirdly, you said that the world cried out for the 36 Israeli dead children. No, they didn't, and you know that very well. You know that very well. If you put up a poster to a missing dog in any Western city, that poster stays up. In city after city in America, posters of abducted Jewish children, including a 10-month-old baby, were put up and were ripped down by people who have been indoctrinated into hate of Jews. Nobody would rip down the poster of a missing dog, but from Dublin to Berkeley, they ripped down posters of abducted Jewish children. So no, I don't think there was
Douglas,
very much care for that around the world.
Let me put this to you, Douglas.
Let me make two other very quick points. Firstly, you said what Hamas might do, as if it was some kind of hypothetical. Hamas showed what they do, what they want to do. It showed it on October the 7th, and its leadership, as I'm sure you very well know, said that they would like to repeat that again and again until they have got rid of every Jew. So, I don't know. I would trust Hamas's word on that rather than your interpretation of what you think they mean when they say that, and your generous interpretation of what you think that means. And finally, as for preventing a Palestinian state, it is nonsense that the Israelis have prevented a Palestinian state. They gave the Gazans a Palestinian state in 2005. They gave them a Palestinian state in 2005 when every Jewish person was ripped from their homes in the Gaza by IDF soldiers. And the Palestinian people were given a state. And what did they do? They voted in Hamas, who then killed their fellow Palestinians, never had another election, and used all the billions of dollars of taxpayer funds from the US, UK, and Europe to build terror tunnels and to enrich themselves so they could live the life of luxury in Qatar. Again and again, the reason there is not a Palestinian state is because the Palestinian leadership doesn't want one.
Okay, Douglas,
didn't want one in 1947. Right, it preferred war, and it doesn't want one now.
Douglas, let me put one point to you raised by Queen Rania of Jordan in a new piece for, I think it was the Washington Post. In just over 2 months, she said Israel's turned Gaza into a hellscape. At least 8,000 children have died, more than the death tolls of Pearl Harbor, September the 11th, and Hurricane Katrina combined. These are gigantic and horrendous numbers of children being killed. Do you not have any qualms about the number of children being killed? I mean, does it not suggest that Israel...
I want to hear Queen Rania talking about this as much as I want to hear Queen Camilla or Meghan Markle. I mean, it's pathetic. Queen Rania is holding on to her own position in Jordan. The only piece of advice she has for anyone is how to marry a king. Queen Rania herself is just playing a very nasty political game. If she cared at all, and I would pose this to all the states in the region, if Jordan cared at all for the Palestinian people, they would take them in.
All right,
they would
Jake,
take them in.
let me
They
get
don't
Jake's-
want them.
let me
If
get
the
Jake-
Egyptians wanted them, they'd take them in, but they don't. Do you know why? Because every country that takes in the Palestinians gets terror. It happened in Egypt, it happened in Jordan, it happened in Syria, it happened in Lebanon, it happened in Tunisia, on and on. That's why these people don't really care about their fellow Muslims. They just care about hating Jews.
All right, Jake, your response.
Yeah, so you asked if he cared about 8,000 dead babies, and his answer was no. Queen Rania bothers me, so complete non-answer, because he doesn't care. He doesn't think that Palestinians' lives are worth anything. He just called them all terrorists.
Well, it's nice you can put that word
and this is what
into
they
my
always
mouth, but
do.
there you go.
So hold on, I let you talk for a long time, so why don't you shut up for a second? So
you're such
we've
a
got all
courteous
of these
man as
dead
well.
babies. We've got all of these dead babies that this monster doesn't care about. He says keep bombing them. A former intelligence officer said in the Israeli press they're using AI in a program called The Gospel, where he said it's basically a mass assassination factory. And we could all see it with our own eyes. And you can do all the propaganda you want. No one believes your nonsense. We see all the dead women. We see all the dead children. Now Israel has killed 20 times the number of civilians that Hamas killed. So would I want Hamas in charge of Israel? Never, never. I don't trust them, and I don't believe that they would be benign. So all of this propaganda about, people don't mind Hamas. No, we mind Hamas. We terribly what happened on October 7th. And I've now shown you different Israelis that have said that it's a problem. And I want peace and security for both Israel and Palestine. And this does not get Israel any peace or security. But when you ask the other side, do you mind tens of thousands of civilians that have been murdered, incinerated alive, body parts picked out of rubble, little babies killed over and over again in what is even the Israeli prime minister is referring to as Amalek, meaning an extermination of the Palestinian people. And I must clarify the difference between a genocide and a Holocaust. A genocide is when you target a specific people and kill a lot of civilians. Srebrenica, where 6,000 people were killed, was considered a genocide. So it doesn't mean you try to murder every single person in that
Jake, let me ask
race.
you.
That is a Holocaust.
But Jake,
let me reply.
Wait, one second. Before I go to Douglas, Jake, one question. You want to get rid of Hamas too, as does Douglas, as do I. If you don't do it the way that Israel is currently doing it, given that they live amongst the population, how else do you do it?
Yeah, there's an excellent way to do it, and there's the right way to do it. So let me explain. So war, this guy talks about, I love war. I go to all the conflict zones. So by watching it and rooting on for more death, I know something about conflict. You know nothing. So here's what reality is. War gets you more war, but peace actually works. So when Israel did a peace deal with Egypt, not only were the Egyptians safe, but the Israelis became safer. That peace deal has held for decade after decade. So how do you do a peace deal in this case? What you do is you do the two-state solution now, and you do it with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And if you then have a Palestinian state, the Palestinian Authority would have the credibility to drive out Hamas from Gaza. That is a realistic plan for both peace, security for Israel and the Palestinians, and driving out Hamas. The idea that you're going to kill 20,000 more civilians, 200,000 more civilians in Gaza, and it's going to drive out Hamas.
Okay, let Douglas answer that. Let Douglas respond to that.
First of all, I mean, your other guest, I mean, I don't know what kind of a creature he is. He's a kind of low-grade thug, as far as I can see. He's listened to nothing I've said.
Yeah, I know, because I'm Muslim. That's what you call all Muslims.
I'll tell you. No, it's not that at all. It's not that at all. I just think that you're just a very low-rent racist. But anyway, let me just get on to it. You say first of all, I don't care about the death of Palestinian children. Yes, I do care. I care very deeply about it. But I also know that the responsibility for their deaths lies on Hamas, which has misgoverned their society for the last 16 years and now has been leading the country into being in a war with Israel. So yes, it's on Hamas this. As for seeing wars, by the way, I just mentioned about seeing wars because as far as I can see, you're very ill-travelled as well as rather ill-lettered and ill-spoken. And I mention that I cover wars and go to wars because I happen to think myself that it's worth seeing things with your own eyes, including things that you don't particularly like, but you report the truth. I don't know if you ever even leave your own bedroom. And I can tell already that you don't, because you've already said something that demonstrates you know nothing about this conflict. You have just demonstrated it in the following terms. You said that this is why we need to push for a two-state solution and give legitimacy to the Palestinian Authority. I'll tell you something you don't know, because I guess you spent no time in the West Bank, have you? I'll tell you something you probably don't know. The Palestinian Authority, Fatah, celebrated the 7th of October massacres. I'll give you another fact which demonstrates you know nothing about this and clearly haven't ever visited any Palestinians in the West Bank as I have. If there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, the reason why there isn't one is because if there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, Hamas would win. So your idea of a two-state solution, I'm afraid you are so out of date and you really should leave your bedroom. Because in this region, nobody thinks that there is a two-state solution on the table because there is not a viable negotiating partner. But I just want to make one other main point. You have gone on and on tonight, throwing accusations out against the Jewish state, against me. It's the sort of thing you do. I know you're a sort of online pugilist and think you can run for office, and good luck with that. But I'd just like to point out that you only really get animated if the Jews are involved. And I can tell that for the following reason. I mean, your surname's Uyghur, isn't it? 1 million Uyghur Muslims in China have been put in concentration camps in the last decade. And people of your ilk never really care about that, do you? Because it's not the Jews doing it, it's the Chinese Communist Party. At the moment, 1 million people who are in Pakistan at the moment, who are your fellow Muslims and who happen to be Afghan, and I don't think you care about them, do you? 1 million Afghans are currently being forcibly deported from Pakistan to Afghanistan. You don't care about that. You're not riled up about that. You're not riled up about what the Janjaweed are currently doing in Sudan, where thousands and thousands of people are being attacked by the Islamist militia there. You don't care about any of that. You get exercised and you rile up what little base you have of malcontents because you're riled up when the Jews do anything.
All right, Cenk.
It's perfectly obvious.
Okay. Cenk, your response.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, my last name is Uyghur. We're named after the Uyghur Turks in China. And have we talked about that on the Young Turks?
I thought you'd spoken up then.
Yes. Yes, we've talked about it endlessly, but you don't know that, and you don't watch the show.
Shame nobody watches your show.
So
nobody does watch your show.
Yeah, well, okay, again, you're interrupting me when I was kind enough to let you go on with your mad ramblings. So how nobody watches the show, we have 5 billion views a year. I don't know what piddling outfit you're on, or what little Substack or whatever the hell you write on. So the reason we're incredibly popular is we fight for all. We fight for shut up. We fight for all innocent civilians. So yes, we've covered all of those conflicts. Yes, I'm against fundamentalist Islam, no question about it. I'm against fundamentalist religions of all kind. In terms of every right-wing supporter of Israel, their only tactic is, hey, don't look at the 8,000 murdered children. Don't look at the 6,400 murdered women. Don't look at the fact that all the hospitals in northern Gaza have been shut down. Don't look at the fact that 4 out of 5 people in northern Gaza are starving right now, and half of the people in southern Gaza are starving. Instead, anti-Semite, anti-Semite. Now, wait a minute. I just told you how much I want peace and security for Israel, how much I hated what happened on October 7th. What you don't know is I started the Young Turks with 2 Jewish friends. And so the whole program is both Jews and Muslims. You know nothing. You know nothing. I have Jewish family and friends. Why in the world, God, as they go to Israel, I want them to be safe, okay? So I have shown empathy for all civilians throughout everything I have ever done. But all you have is hatred. Oh, he's an anti-Semite. Kill the Muslims. Kill the Palestinians. And once we kill them, by the way, we'll blame them for it. Israel had to murder all those babies in Palestine because Hamas made us do it. Then why are you listening to Hamas? Why are you letting Hamas drive your agenda? Well, you don't have to kill those civilians. It's a mass assassination factory.
We are, 9 weeks into this war. 20,000 people, according to the Hamas-run health authority, but the numbers have not been questioned by other official bodies. 20,000 people so far have died on the Palestinian side. And it is estimated from the IDF that they say they've killed 7,000 or so Hamas terrorists. That number's not been verified. But if you take that as being accurate, that's 20% of the estimated number of Hamas terrorists that exist. Therefore, there's 80% still to be eliminated, which at this rate would take another 8 to 10 months and would lead to potentially several 100,000 civilians being killed and pretty much all of Gaza being obliterated with nowhere for the 2 million who've been displaced to go back to. So my question for you is, if this is the game plan by Israel to finish Hamas right to the last terrorist, what is left after that? They talk about the day after the war. What does it look like? Who runs Gaza? Where do these people go back to live? In other words, what actually happens if Israel is successful, however long it takes, in eliminating Hamas?
Well, first of all, I just have to add, you quite rightly said it, Piers, that the figures you gave are Hamas figures, and we do have to treat them with more than a grain of salt. As for, again, my counterpart here goes on about the deliberate genocide of children and women. I mean, I know, and this is the sort of thing I think you do. You sort of claim that there are bombs being deliberately dropped on children and old women. Why would Israel want to drop bombs deliberately on children or old women? I mean, it's just a shame you don't get out and see anything. The Israelis do an incredibly careful campaign before bombings to try to make sure that civilians are warned to leave areas that are about to be attacked. Everybody knows that. Everybody in the region knows that. It's a shame that that fact hasn't got to you. As it happens, the whole question you raised, Piers, is a very, very complex one. I don't have the answer, and I don't believe anyone does have the answer about the day after. Nobody wants to rule the Gaza. The Israelis used to be in charge of it. They left, as I say, in 2005 to the last Jew. They were all taken out of their houses. Israel doesn't want to rule the Gaza. Now, who can rule the Gaza? Hamas clearly cannot, because they set it up as a terrorist statelet. Can some Fatah-like authority be encouraged to take it over? Possibly. Possibly. I spoke to one Palestinian analyst earlier today who said that actually, just as I said earlier, that an election in the West Bank today would elect Hamas, perhaps an election tomorrow, if it was to happen, and I'm not sure if that's going to be a good idea, might even actually elect not Hamas Palestinians to power. But it's a heck of a risk. The reality is that the only solution to Gaza that anyone can see, I can imagine, is that it has to be a solution which involves multiple players in the region. The question of the Gaza is a very complex question. It used to be ruled by Egypt, used to be run by Egypt. Can Egypt have a role? In my view, it has to have a role. Can Jordan be involved? In my view, yes, it has to have a role. Can the Gulf states, including those who've been pumping money to Hamas, have some kind of role? Yes, I would hope so. It cannot be Israel's task alone to deal with the question of the Gaza. It has to involve multiple players in the region, but there's one kicker to that, which is that none of the Arabs in this region that I'm sitting in care a jot about the Palestinians. They really do not. If they did, for all of their talk, they would have done something. They would not have decided to keep the Palestinians out, as they have in country after country. Queen Rania can invite the Gazans into Jordan. She can invite the West Bank Palestinians into Jordan. She doesn't. Egypt could open its border with Gaza. It doesn't. The Egyptian border with Gaza is firmer and more closely locked than the Israeli ones. There are Gazan workers who, until the atrocities of October the 7th, every day were going through the Eretz crossings and others to work in Israel and to earn a decent living. Were there workers going in daily into Egypt? No, because the Egyptians don't want Palestinians in their country. So the only solution is a regional one, but I'm afraid in this region there are very few people who care about the Palestinians.
Okay, Douglas, you had the first word. Cenk, I'll give you the last one. I want to preface it by saying that it's been reported today, and this is coming from Hamas's statements apparently, picked up by newspapers in America, that there was a new hostage deal offered, which was that Hamas were asked, will you release the 40 women and children you still have captive in return for a week-long ceasefire, and they apparently have rejected that. So I think that when we talk about behaviour on both sides. The mere fact that there are still 40 women and children in the clutches of Hamas, and God knows what they're doing to those poor women, that should be noted too. There are still innocent people being held in the most appalling conditions by Hamas, and that is also motivating Israel's response. But I'll give you the last word, Cenk.
Yeah. So I wish to God that they would release those women and children. I think it's immoral to keep them. It's wrong in every way. But Israel kills more than 40 women and children every single day, all completely innocent. Look, even if you take IDF's outlandish numbers of 7,000 Hamas fighters killed, that means their kill ratio of civilians to fighters is still worse than Hamas's. And they have now killed 20 times the number of civilians that Hamas has killed. So when Douglas talks about driving them into Egypt or Jordan, that's just ethnic cleansing. They live in Gaza. So if you push them out and they say, well, you're all Arabs anyway, why don't you just go live somewhere else in the region? That's the definition of ethnic cleansing. That is outrageous. And he says it with blithely, with no concern, because Palestinian lives don't matter. And you ask them, hey, how many Palestinians can you possibly kill? And he never answered the question. So the reality is you cannot kill your way out of this conflict. The more that they kill, the more. What do you think that the Palestinians are going to feel? What would you feel if your family was butchered, if their heads were crushed by a bomb that was dropped on a building, if they were lit on fire by the bombs that were dropped? What would you do? You'd fight back the rest of your life. And then they are permanently occupied. And now Netanyahu says he was proud that he prevented a Palestinian state and that he will continue to prevent a Palestinian state. He is not a partner for peace. Or he profits from war. His whole career is about perpetuating war, not just to murder Palestinians, but it keeps Israel unsafe for eternity. So the whole point of Israel is to be a safe haven for oppressed Jews throughout the world. It cannot be a safe haven as long as you're imprisoning 5 million Palestinians and saying, we are never, ever going to let you go. And if you ever dare oppose us, we will kill your women and children. It's disgusting.
They're not in prison.
It's not what Israel was meant to do.
I'd urge you again, Cenk, leave your bedroom sometime and come to this region and see it for yourself.
Hey, I thought I was supposed to get the last word. This idiot's talking about bedrooms.
The Palestinians
hey, you care about the babies. You care about the women. Douglas, why don't you admit you don't care about dead Palestinian babies, dead Palestinian women, because you don't mind it. Israel, you say right or wrong, no matter how many people they have murdered, no matter how many kids they have crushed to death, you don't care because you don't care about human beings. All you want is some sort of warmongering, Israeli state, U.S. state, etc.
All right, listen. I've got to wrap it up. I've got to say, listen, I think we actually had a very
little man.
I found it super evil. You don't mind the deaths of all those thousands of people.
Let's not descend.
Evil warmongering.
Jake, let's not descend into this. I actually think, with a few exceptions, we had a good debate there, right? I understand passions run high. I think it's a shame whenever I do these debates when it gets ad hominem in the way that it has occasionally tonight. But I do think we've also had some really smart takes from both sides about what is going on and where we need to get to. I think we can all agree on one thing. We all want to end up with peace here somehow. It's going to be horrendously difficult.
We do.
It's very complicated.
That's not true.
But I do think I don't actually think, knowing both of you as I do, I don't believe the charge that neither of you care is true. I think you do care about all the lives that are being lost.
It's just a lazy smear.
And I think that we should start from an acceptance we all care and then try and be more constructive. But listen, I thank you both for joining me. I wish you both a Merry Christmas. I'll see you both, no doubt, in the new year. And I thank you both. I thank you both for your regular contributions to the show, particularly since this war started, because I really do appreciate it. And I want to hear. I think you both articulate your cases extremely powerfully. So thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Shmuley.
You have the Jewish community beginning to call her not Candace Owens, but Candace Ovens.
People can see and hear evil, and what you are doing right now is an act of evil. We all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged.
Candace Owens never met Michael Jackson, I was his rabbi for 2 years. She said that I killed him, that she would say the Jews killed Michael Jackson.
That
You
they have a
never
right
said that
to-
I threatened to murder you?
No, I
Every
never
time
said that
said
you
it.
threatened to murder me. Don't cut me
You know
off. I
something?
did
You know
not cut
something?
you off.
Now she's fact-checking it? You're kidding me, right?
wait for you,
I
so
don't,
give me
I don't
one
have, I don't
second.
have a computer on me.
The Israeli Defense Force had dropped more bombs on Gaza than were dropped on Dresden. That is true. Do you accept that, Rabbi Shmuley?
You know, Pierce, I find
you
this an
accept it?
astonishing debate.
You asked?
Wait,
you asked for the proof.
wait, first of
Do
all,
you
I don't
accept that's true?
first of all, I don't. Wait, what do you mean it's true? Because she said it's true?
The war in Gaza is barreling towards a grim anniversary. This deadly year, sparked by a terrorist atrocity and met with an often merciless response, has changed the way that many people think about an historic dispute. Never in our lifetimes has there been such active Israel's role in the modern world and whether the United States and its allies should back it. Protests and counter-protests have brought anti-Semitism to the fore, along with the charge that it sometimes insulates Israel from criticism. My next two guests have vivid opinions on these big issues and have had a very public feud. We're bringing them together for what we intend, I hope, to be a proper debate. The topics will be the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism in public life, American involvement in Israel, and Israeli involvement in the United States. And we'll even talk about Michael Jackson, who is relevant to this debate. Both guests will get roughly equal speaking time and a chance to question each other. Speaking of the other guest is not encouraged. Ad hominem attacks are strongly discouraged. But knowing these two as I do, I can make no promises. Returning to Uncensored, host of the Candace podcast, Candace Owens, and the author of The Israel Warrior and the Michael Jackson tapes, Rabbi Shmuley. So welcome to both of you. First of all, it's great you're doing this. You've had a public feud for a couple of years now. You've torn into each other in various forums. This is your chance to take each other on. And at the center of this, as I said in the intro there, is a very serious global story, which is the Israel-Hamas war and all the complexities that come away from that. I want to give you both the chance to make an opening statement. So, Rabbi Shmuley, you won the toss. We didn't really actually toss, but we both agreed you can do this. You go first. Your opening remarks.
Thank you, Pierce, for having me, and Candace, thank you for debating me. I have spent my life bringing together the Black and Jewish communities, emphasizing that we share not only a history of shared persecution, but of spiritual promise. Today we debate an American tragedy, a woman of unique eloquence who has abused that eloquence to become simultaneously the foremost anti-Black rhetorician in all of the United States and the foremost anti-Semite in America. The statements that Candace has made against her own community, that they cry wolf and constantly say that they're victims of racism. Her attacks on George Floyd, a man who was suffocated to death for a $20 counterfeit note saying that he was a horrible human being. A woman who went up in front of CPAC and said, I was never a slave in America, as if that's the only form of discrimination, is what has led her community to call her not Candace, but Clandis. The first ever female Black woman who appears in her rhetoric against blacks, calling LeBron James dumb and stupid, an icon to the Black community, as Clandis. Simultaneously, you have the Jewish community beginning to call her not Candace Owens, but Candace Ovens, because her Goebbels-style rhetoric against Jews, that Jews are nearly all pedophiles. The State of Israel has set up a Theodor Herzl, a pedophile, as a haven for pedophiles. That Judaism is a demonic, satanic cult that only protects pedophiles. And by the way, her absolute obsession with Jewish sexuality and Jewish genitalia, the first lady of France, Brigitte Macron's genitalia, is disturbing. It's one of the reasons I think she hates Sigmund Freud so much, because she's a Freudian field dream in terms of his arguments that the greater the sexual suppression and repression, the greater we see violence. But when you say that the Jews killed JFK because he was about to ostracize Israel, when you invent all of these fabrications out of whole cloth, what is the result? The result is the demonization of Jews that leads to violence. Pierce, just 1 week ago, 2 days after Candace falsely accused me, as she has for 2 years, of being a murderer, of threatening to kill her, something for which she will face legal action because you cannot malign a rabbi and his daughter as murderers. 2 days later, I was swatted in my house where 5 police cars had to break into my house because Mayor Michael Wilds of Englewood, New Jersey, received an email arguably from one of Candace's followers after she said essentially what Henry II says, "Who will rid me of this troublesome priest?" which leads directly to the murder of Thomas Becket, who today is a Catholic saint, of course. We were swatted, and the FBI is now investigating Candace's rhetoric. They're investigating
Rabbi Shmuley, I'm
everything she
interrupting
said that
because
I am
you've now
wait, just
you've now
wait,
been
one
speaking
final,
for 3
one
minutes.
final point.
So Candace will get exactly the
Okay.
same amount of time. It's up to you, but it's an opening statement, right? And what I would say...
May I just say finally, if I may?
Well, if it's quick, yeah.
The biggest issue I have with Candace, to be honest, is that she claims to be a Christian. Candace, didn't Jesus say you're supposed to love your enemies? Is the love you show me that you call me filth twice on the last show that you did with Pierce a piece of filth? You're supposed to love your enemies. Is that turning the other cheek? And Pierce, you're an English gentleman. I've known you for many years. You allowed her to say that without even a piece of filth. When Jesus said that you're supposed to turn the other cheek, where have you ever turned the other cheek? When Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, the arrogance, the nonstop attack against Jews, the demonization. If you are a Christian, then I am the second coming of Christ.
OK, that's 4 minutes you've spoken to. Out of fairness, Candace, if you want to use 4 minutes to respond, you can. All I would note, Rabbi Shmuley, is you've spent 4 minutes personally attacking Candace Owens. I set this up as a debate about what is happening with the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism, and so on and so on. You've turned it all completely, immediately, into an ad hominem onslaught against Candace.
How could you possibly say that? You are speaking to a woman who says the Jews are a ring of demonic pedophiles, and you're saying that I have no right to defend my people. You know, Pierce, you have to stop this once and for all. There was nothing ad hominem at all.
All right.
When Candace says that the black community is a bunch of crybabies,
okay.
Everything I said was policy. I could not disagree more.
Candace will now get the same amount of time, if you want it, Candace, to respond.
Thank you, Piers. And I don't think I really do need to respond to the ad hominem attacks. I think actually one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said. And trying to screen that as a defense of black people. The black people will never accept Rabbi Shmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America. They won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, you know, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing and what we've always recognized is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across from me, or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believe that he was the Messiah. What is it? It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the 2 Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norton Mezvinsky. And their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Shmuley's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world." And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is so different and so great that the body should be considered completely different species. So that is a belief. And you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Shmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I'm on equal footing here, that across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering what is going on in Israel. What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, those are the two opening statements. Rabbi Shmuley, let me ask you this. Where are we now with this war? Because it seems that the people inside Israel are now beginning to come after Prime Minister Netanyahu, angry that his mission to save the hostages is simply not working. We saw 6 more executed at the weekend. Obviously, that's on Hamas. But the relatives of other hostages are saying, for God's sake, bring back the hostages before it's too late. And there's no sign of any deal being done to do that. And there's a lot of pressure on Netanyahu. Is his mission statement failing?
Yes, I will answer that in just a moment. But Pierce, your guest just called me mentally unhinged. She called me filth twice on your show. You did not just say to her, Candace, can you stop the ad hominem attacks? Did I ever say anything? I stuck to policy. Can you at least just be fair and say that's unnecessary, Candace, or is this too against law?
Well, no. You spent 4 minutes lacerating her.
Calling me mentally unhinged, is that
You're sitting there to defend that charge.
Is that ad hominem?
You spent 4 minutes attacking her personally. She's perfectly entitled
Pierce,
to return the favor.
with all due respect, when one of your guests calls someone else filth, I think that you, as an English gentleman, should step in. But let me answer your question. No less, the only thing of Christ that Candace Owens has actually fulfilled comes from Matthew chapter 10, verse 35, where Jesus says, I've come to separate and create conflict between a woman and her mother-in-law and father-in-law. My answer to your question about Gaza is that Lord Michael Farmer, a courageous British peer who happens to be Candace Owens' father-in-law, issued one of the most robust and beautiful defenses of Israel that any of us have read since October 7th. He said that, of course, there's a lot of terrible Palestinian casualties. God loves every Palestinian child as much as he loves a Jewish child. He said that Israel has no choice but to fight this war because Hamas hides in residential areas and under nurseries. He said that Israel, the savagery of October 7th, demands a response. He said that Israel is doing exactly the right thing. And he said that he's doing all this in response to a, quote, high-profile member of his family. The contempt to not even mention his daughter-in-law, Candace Owens, because he didn't want to say her name. And he didn't even say, I love my daughter-in-law, but because the British remember Hitler, they remember the Battle of Britain, they remember the V-1 and V-2 rockets. Candace Owens has actually now said that the Nazis were the good guys and it was the Allies, the British, people like yourself, Pierce, who engaged in the ethnic cleansing of 12 million people based on some documentary she watched called The Savage Peace on the BBC, which wasn't even about the Allies. She always distorts. It was about the Czechoslovakia, a country that no longer even exists. And as far as what she said about Michael Jackson, putting me on enemies list, that is a total fabrication. It was invented by someone named Dieter Wietzner, who sued Michael Jackson for $64 million, tried to shake him down, and Michael had to pay him $4 million. I worked to save Michael's life. Candace Owens never met Michael Jackson. I was his rabbi for 2 years. I love him. I missed him. I tried to get him off of drugs. She said that I killed him. And talk about the contempt for people struggling with addiction, that she would say the Jews killed Michael Jackson. And with all due respect, Pierce, you have not said that one of those things, that I'm a murderer, a man who doesn't have a speeding ticket, who doesn't have a parking ticket, is a murderer, and the police have to come and the FBI to protect me. Are you going to say...
Here's what I'm going to say to you, Rabbi Shmuley. Once again, you've just singularly failed to answer my question. So if you're just going to continue, every time I ask you a question about the war, which is the point of the debate, to just launch into by more than 8 million people. Rabbi Shmuley Boteach has been called the most famous rabbi in America. He's the international best-selling author of Kosher Hate and The Israel Warrior. Both men are passionate, both men are influential, and they both have vehemently opposing views. Tonight, they go uncensored and head-to-head. We're bringing together two very opinionated, passionate, influential people, very opposing views, and we're going to have a proper debate, and we're going to see if somewhere there is perhaps more that we can agree on than we first imagined. So thank you for joining me, gentlemen. We tossed a coin before we came on air tonight, and actually you won the toss, and you said you want to go second.
I defer to my brother.
And the way this will work, Mohammed, we have 4 sections of this debate, and at the start of each one, you'll both get 1 minute uninterrupted to say what you want to say about each of the themed titles of each block. So you go first, and at the end of your minute, you'll hear a sound, and when you hear that, you end, and then Rabbi Shmuley gets his chance to speak. So the first theme is a simple one. Are Hamas to blame? You have a minute, Mohammed, from now.
From one perspective, Hamas started the battle because obviously from October 7th, even they themselves title it Tufan al-Aqsa, or the flooding of al-Aqsa. But from another perspective, if you really look at it from an international law perspective, we're talking about 1967, we're talking about Syria Resolution 242, in which it is actually stated that Israel is in a belligerent state because they're occupying the West Bank, East Jerusalem and Gaza. And they have been, so therefore the war has been continual for a very long time according to international law. But let's remove Hamas from the situation altogether. Let's remove them. What do you have? You have the West Bank. And what do you have in the West Bank? You have 187 children who have been put in prisons. They have been put in prisons, according to Bet Salem, without charge. You have 44 children before October the 7th that have been killed before October the 7th in just 2023 alone. So if you remove Hamas from the equation, what you have the West Bank. You remove dominance from the equation, you have the West Bank, and what do you have? You have occupation, you have settlement, which you condemned, rightfully so. You condemned that on your show. The settlement's there.
Okay. Rabbi Shmuley, 1 minute to respond.
Resolution 242 in the UN doesn't mention a single thing about aggression or aggressor. That is a total fabrication, and it speaks about disputed territories. But let's be clear. The occupier of Gaza is Hamas. They won an election in 2006, had a civil war with Mahmoud Abbas, took the Palestinian Authority officials, threw them off buildings, killed Muslims, killed Arabs. Mahmoud Abbas is afraid to go to Gaza. He's terrified of Hamas. He hasn't been there since 2007. And let's be clear, Hamas is an abomination to Islam. Sultan Salah al-Din, the greatest Muslim conqueror of all time, after whom the main artery in Gaza is named, he said that you have to allow all prisoners to be redeemed. He would never hold hostages. And remember, Islam is about fair treatment of prisoners of war. Hamas beheaded Thai non-Jewish workers. You asked in your last appearance here for real first-hand sources. I'm the first-hand source. I saw it in Kibbutz Alumim. They raped women. They had sex with dead women's bodies. They are evil, and do the right thing and call them evil.
All right, we've had a minute each. Okay, we've got a passionate start. Mohammed, let me ask you about Hamas.
I want to first, before you do that, I want to commend you, Piers, honestly, because bringing me on for the second time, I have to commend you. And the fact that you actually condemned the settlements is very good. But people want to know, do you think the IDF are a terrorist organization?
No.
You don't think they're a terrorist organization? Okay, well, if you look at the UN definition of terrorist organization, they say killing civilians for political gain.
You're asking my opinion.
No, but if the UN definition, according to the UN definition, is killing civilians for political objectives. Why are they not terrorist organizations?
Well, you've asked me a straight question. I don't think they are a terror organization.
So when you see babies like this, the ones who kill babies like this are not terrorists.
It's horrific.
So the people who kill babies like this are not terrorists.
Well, let me respond.
Yes.
Let me respond. We'll
it's not your turn.
You can both get into this. Here's my response to that. And I thought carefully about this. I'll be very honest about my own feelings. I have a real moral quandary about this because as a father, I hate these scenes of kids being killed in Gaza. It's horrific, right? We all know it's horrific.
But are they a terrorist organisation, though?
I'm about to explain to you what I think my position is. My position is, after what happened on October the 7th, it was so barbaric, so disgusting.
So you can kill children?
Well, no, what you can do...
That's exactly what terrorists say, by the way.
Let me answer your question.
This is not a debate. This is someone else becoming the host of the show and now interviewing you. I thought we're being interviewed. No. Mohammed, you and I are being interviewed. You're not here to interview him.
You're going to have your chance.
Mohammed, you can put it
Don't
down.
make him lose control of his own show. You do this all the time. I'm not going to let it happen tonight.
All right, Rubbish, let me answer...
Please have respect for the...
No. Stop interviewing the interviewer and be respectful. And be respectful.
Let me respond.
Tell me, sorry, is it a terrorist organisation or not?
No.
Why not?
I do not believe so.
They kill civilians for political objectives.
You have to let me answer.
Go ahead.
Okay. Here's my answer to that. When Hamas did what they did, two things. One, Hamas knew exactly what Israel's response would be. They knew they would come incredibly hard back.
I don't absolve them.
Wait a minute. I'm not absolving anybody.
I'm not absolving them.
Yeah, okay.
I'm saying the West Bank is West Hamas.
I know.
West Hamas.
You have to let me answer.
You got 44 children killed like this in the West Bank.
This is ridiculous.
Wait a minute, Rabashwari. Let me just answer you quickly.
Go ahead.
I believe Israel has a right to defend itself from after that terror attack.
But can they kill children?
Wait a minute.
Can they?
Wait a minute. Particularly after the Hamas spokesman only last week said that they want to do this again and again and again. That's an existential threat to Israel.
Why don't they fight them man to man? Man to man. Fight them man to man. Why do you have to kill children?
Wait a minute.
Why do you have to
let me
kill
answer
children?
you, Mohammed.
Why?
Let me answer you.
Of a ratio of 100 to 1, by the way.
Let me answer you.
100 to 1 ratio.
Let me answer you.
Go ahead.
Otherwise, it's pointless.
Go ahead.
So, I agree that Israel must defend itself. I agree they have to get rid of Hamas because Hamas is wedded to an ideology of existentially removing Israel.
Is this acceptable?
Wait a minute. I'm coming to your answer.
Is this acceptable?
I'm coming to your answer.
This is not.
This is not even a conversation.
Wait a minute.
Listen, I came all the way from the United States for this debate.
Let me finish.
And he will not let anyone else speak. And if that's how these shows work, no. You are rude, you are a bully, you just are trying to interrupt people. I'm going to have a chance to speak, or there's no point in doing this show. He did this last time and you allowed him to, but I won't allow him to because I will never be bullied by a bully.
At the moment,
let me be clear.
Wait a minute. No one's allowing me to answer your question.
Go ahead, sir.
And it's this. I believe Israel has a right to defend itself.
Okay.
I agree that they need to get rid of Hamas.
Who
are terror groups.
In this way?
Well, here's the quandary for me morally, right?
Why is it a quandary, though?
I'll tell you why.
With Hamas, it's not a quandary,
I'll
but
tell you why.
Because
In war, when you declare war, as Britain did with the Nazis...
100 to 1 ratio.
No,
100
of course,
to 1.
There are
combatant to non-combatant ratio.
A far higher number of children in Gaza, proportionate to population, than almost anywhere in the world. So when they go after Hamas...
Give me a chance.
Very sadly... Mohammed, let me finish.
This is becoming ridiculous. No.
Very sadly...
You are the one who insisted on equal time. I never did, but you will not respect equal time.
I will come to you literally in 30 seconds.
He's going to ask you a question.
In 30 seconds, I'll come to you.
He's going to come to you afterwards.
Let me finish, please. I am in charge here, Mohammed. So my final point on this is, unfortunately, in war, civilians
100 to 1 ratio. 100 to 1 ratio.
Yes.
100 to 1 ratio.
Yes, they get killed.
No, not 100 to 1 ratio. It's an unacceptable ratio.
Get killed.
Piers, listen.
Really, in you come.
You know, Piers, can I say respectfully, and I mean this as no insult, I'm amazed that you're intimidated by this man. I feel, well, with all due respect,
if I can speak,
if I can speak,
I wouldn't bring him back if I was intimidated.
If I can speak.
And he raises a very valid question, by the way.
No, he does not, because I have, before he did this debate, he went on X on Twitter and said, I'm only doing it if there's equal time. And then he is violating that. I never asked for equal time. I just want to be heard, but he won't even let me be heard. Let me explain something to you. You said in a video the other day, and you can look me in the eye, you said that Jews are now trembling. Muhammad, I am not. No, don't interrupt me. I am not trembling. It's all on my Instagram page. Now, you see this yarmulke? It means that I represent something. I'm an ambassador. You're an ambassador of Islam. You are talking about a religion that started the world's first universities, educated women. Fatima started the first university in the 9th century in Fez, Morocco.
Irrelevant.
Now we have a man who says that he's a representative of Islam.
He's meant to be speaking to you, right?
He goes to Speaker's Corner. He speaks about whether 5-year-old girls are old enough for sex. He says that gay men are dying of AIDS as a punishment from God. And I'm sorry to have to say this to the listeners, that blood is gushing from their backsides. They're better off. You know what it is? Because you are desecrating a great religion. Now let me tell you why. Let me tell you why it's here. Because he will defend. I will.
Bring it back to the topic.
He will defend Hamas's butchery, savagery,
away.
He doesn't care that
Running away.
Hamas is an abomination to Islam because Islam.
But he hasn't done
the
that.
children in Gaza are dying because Hamas uses them as bulletproof vests.
Okay.
The United States and France
Okay.
and England said yesterday that the Al-Shifa hospital is a military base.
Okay.
It has a tiny veneer.
Let him have his minute.
And it's a tiny veneer of emergency rooms.
Okay.
Hold on a minute.
But underneath all of it is a military base.
have a minute
And let me
to
tell you
speak.
something. If it's true that any of these countries care about the Muslims in Gaza because they believe what he's saying, that Israel's killing them, this is a map of all the countries that took place last week in Riyadh to save the Palestinians of Gaza from Israel. Do you know how many? That's Israel, a tiny thing. You know how many of them took in even one Palestinian from Gaza? Zero, nothing.
All right.
Look at that map.
Let me-
because they
Stop
want
pointing,
to.
stop
The
pointing.
Arabs
Let me-
want to see.
All right,
No, I'm
Rabbi
pointing
Shmuley.
the
Hang on.
Arabs want to see
Rabbi
Hamas.
Shmuley.
Don't intimidate me. Don't bully
Okay,
me.
okay,
Thank you.
let me ask you-
Don't intimidate me.
Stop pointing.
I'm not
Guys,
afraid of
I've
you.
got to be able to ask
Thank
questions.
you.
It's a debate.
Let him
Let's
have
come
one
back.
minute,
let me
he's
ask you
insistent.
one specific question which he raised, which I don't think actually is your belief. I don't think you have defended what Hamas did on October the 7th.
Yeah, I haven't.
I think you share our
Are they
view.
evil?
we-
Are they
unless
evil?
I'm wrong.
Are they
We've spoken
evil?
about this
Are they
before.
evil?
Stop
Are
speaking.
they
Is it me
evil?
or him I'm
Are they
speaking to?
evil?
Stop
Rabbi
speaking to
Shmuley,
this. Stop
Hamas
speaking.
you're now
evil.
doing
Stop
what you
speaking.
accused him of doing.
Stop
so
speaking.
let me ask you, what is your view of Hamas post-October 7th?
I think that they, just like anybody else, have to be examined. Have to look at all the.
What's
the
your
pros and cons.
opinion about them?
Yeah, I think that here's my opinion. Let me be straightforward about this, right? Anybody who kills civilians, anybody, whether it's the IDF, I'm consistent in this manner. If it's proven beyond reasonable doubt that these people have killed civilians in both of our faith traditions, in Islam and Judaism, in the Quran is mentioned, in the Prophet, he said it himself, you cannot kill a woman, you cannot kill a child. I condemn them. I condemn them. That's what I do. Straight away, whether he's Muslim, whether he's non-Muslim, whether he's Christian or anybody else. I've already said that. So I'm not being inconsistent here. My question is, if that is exactly the barometer that we're using, if that's the moral reasoning that we're using, then we have to say, look, if you have a 100-to-1 ratio, and that's what it is, a 100-to-1 ratio. And do you know how I got this figure? I got this figure from the IDF themselves because they have reported
Okay,
to
but
the...
let me ask you this. Does Hamas deserve to stay in power after what they did?
I don't think we should have Hamas in power. What I think we should...
Okay.
No, let me tell you...
So how
we
do you
should have...
How do you get rid of them?
We should have a Palestinian Authority with bigger armies and airports, with proper tanks and with airplanes like every country in the world.
You know what? You might be right. But here's the
Absolutely.
point.
They won't allow it.
How do you get
The Israelis won't allow
How do you
that.
get rid of Hamas?
What you don't do, I can tell you for a fact, is try and kill 30,000 of them with a 100-to-1 ratio. Because if you do that, then you're committing genocide. Because you'd have to kill 3 million Palestinians.
Rabbi Shmuley?
Do you even know the definition of genocide?
I haven't said genocide.
What's it? You just said it.
No, I said if you.
What is the definition of genocide? What's the definition?
I said if you do.
You always claim to be an academic. You're always touting your Oxford credentials. What is the definition of
Conditional.
He said
genocide?
conditional.
If you do it,
genocide is where
you'll be genocidal.
Genocide is where
I didn't accuse.
you target an ethnicity for extinction. Ethnicity side murder.
Yes, if you do it. If you kill 3 million Palestinians, are you genocidal or not? If you kill 3 million Palestinians, are you genocidal or not?
Don't speak over each
There are
other.
1.8 million
What's the Holocaust of genocide?
Muslim
What's the Holocaust of
Arabs who
genocide?
live in total peace in Israel as equal citizens. In fact, Israel practiced reverse discrimination against the Jews because the Jews are
What's that got
conscripted
to do
to
with my
fight
question?
Hamas. So, if
Would you-
Israel, excuse me, no, you will not interrupt me.
Stop
If Israel,
it,
you
man.
will
Stop
not
it.
interrupt
Stop it,
me.
man. You're
You
embarrassing
will
yourself. You're
not
embarrassing
interrupt
yourself.
me. You will not
You're
interrupt.
embarrassing
You will
yourself.
not bully me. You will not interrupt me.
Stop
I am
talking,
not
man.
afraid of
All
you.
right, don't talk
Stop
over
saying
each
the
other.
Jews
Stop
tremble.
shaking.
Now, let me
Guys,
be
stop
clear.
shaking.
Let me be
We're
clear.
getting
Let
nowhere
me-
if you shout over each other.
Well, then you need to control your guests with all due respect.
Literally. Control both
He
guests.
said equal time, and there's no equal time. Now,
There's no equal time on
if
this
Israel
bit,
was
right?
interested in a genocide of the Palestinians, why do they have 1.8 million equal Arab Muslim citizens who are in the Israeli Supreme Court, who are 1/3 of the medical
Is that a
profession?
question?
Do you
To
know
me
that?
or
Do you
to
know? Do you know that an Arab judge put the president of Israel in jail for accused rape? That was Moshe Katsav. That's how little Israel's an apartheid state, genocidal state. This man sitting next to me, Mohammed Hijab, will not distinguish between self-defense when Hamas comes to brutalize and murder your people versus when an army like Britain, like France, stops, retaliates to simply protect their citizens. You don't believe the Jews should have a right to defend themselves. Say it outright then say it.
The Jews have the right to defend themselves.
They do.
Yes, they do.
So
of
that's
course.
why we have to go into...
Everybody has a right to defend
that's why
themselves.
we have
Jews
to
have the
go
right
into
to defend
Gaza to
themselves.
stop Hamas.
Yes, they can go into Gaza and stop Hamas.
But...
No, they can go in, but don't. No, hey, hold on. Let me tell you my position. Let me tell you my.
So they can go in. Thank
He
God.
asked me a question.
Go
Can I
ahead.
answer it? Yes, they can go into even fight. Even Abu Ubaidah, the general of Hamas, he said, "Nahnu fi intidharikum" in Arabic. We are waiting for you. That's what he's been saying. Hold on. You've asked me a question.
Go ahead.
They do have a right. What I've been advocating all along is face-to-face confrontation. What I'm against, hold on, excuse me. What I'm against is a 100-to-1 ratio, because if you have
All right.
100,
We're going to come to this in block two.
Let me,
all right.
Okay, fine.
Hamas is hiding under hospitals.
Okay.
What face-to-face confrontation? Hamas is shooting children who are going south.
I'm okay with face-to-face confrontation. I like it.
Block two is exactly...
It's the honourable way.
Block two is exactly this question.
Go ahead, let's go.
My only observation,
He hasn't had
Rabbi
a
Shmuley, so far, you're being more personal and ad hominem than he is.
With all
right?
due respect, I think that's extremely unfair, because
you are.
every time I say anything, no, listen.
And you keep answering for him, when in fact, when you actually ask him questions,
because
he gives you straight answers.
If Mohammed Hijab wants to be a representative and ambassador of Islam, then he has to take responsibility for his position.
I don't want to be any of that.
He actually said that Islam believes in death. You're not going to beat us because we want to die. We're prepared to lose thousands of people. Is Islam really a religion of death?
We're taking a break.
You are a poor ambassador of your faith.
Hey.
You believe in martyrdom.
Of course
I do. You want to be a martyr?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to die fighting the Jews?
I didn't say Jews. Who said Jews?
Okay,
do you know
want to be a martyr where? What does it mean? Martyr means someone who dies for his faith.
Muhammad told us, "Man qutila duna malihi fahuwa shaheed." Whoever dies defending themselves, defending their wealth, is a martyr. No.
Do you want to die defending Islam, but do you want Islam to be a religion of peace?
Hold on. This child for us is a martyr.
You're right.
Do you agree or not?
Because Hamas is using him as a human shield.
Really?
Yes, Hamas is hiding behind him.
Let's go to the next section.
Condemn Hamas.
All right, let's time out.
Come on, man.
Let's try not to talk over each other, because the viewers can't hear it, right? I don't mind the passion. I don't mind the debate. I don't mind the fire. I do mind if we can't hear what you're saying. It's pointless.
Let's do the minute.
Let's go to the second topic, right? This time,
has he had his minute, by the way?
Rabbi Shmuley, you will go first with a minute to say what you want to say, and then Mohammed Hijab, you'll get yours. So the theme is this, and the question is this for Block 2. Has Israel gone too far in its response to the October the 7th terror attacks? Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, you have a minute starting now.
I just came here by taxi and passed the statue of Winston Churchill. That's in the lifetime of our parents, okay? He is the greatest British statesman of the 20th century. You know what he did when he had a genocidal threat, knowing that Hitler wanted to eviscerate, annihilate Britain? He carpet bombed all of Germany, Dresden, Essen, Hamburg. Israel has not even gotten close to that. Israel does not send its Air Force to carpet bomb cities. It sends in its military. I have a friend who died, six children, 39, because he was personally trying to stop a Hamas terror tunnel. Israel is surgical. Israel is only going after the fighters. Israel has opened humanitarian corridors for the Palestinians to go south. Hamas shoots them and makes sure they don't go. Hamas builds its military structures. Right, Shifa Hospital is this much hospital, and it's this much military. They love using Palestinians. And that's why they've stolen their money. They got about $16 billion from the international community. There isn't one bomb shelter in Gaza. They don't care about the civilians at all. Israel's doing the right thing.
Mohammed, you have a minute.
What I'm saying is the 100-to-1 ratio comes from the following figures. We know that 10,000 civilians have died. Of them, according to the IDF, as reported by The Guardian, dozens, they say, about 60 Hamas died, which we're being liberal by saying 100-to-1 figures. For every one Hamas, you have to kill 100 civilians. That's effectively what we're saying. If the trajectory continues as it is, then you have to kill 3 million Palestinian civilians in order to kill 30,000 Hamas fighters. If you want to extinguish them, eviscerate them, annihilate them, destroy them, you have to do that. Now, you have Herzog, who is the president that you interviewed, saying that all Palestinians, they are responsible. This man is being more slippery. He's being more slippery than the lubricants that he sells in his daughter's sex shop. And that's the reality of the situation.
Did you really just say that? You know, you seem obsessed with Jewish sex. It's bizarre. Yesterday, you actually spoke about Ben Shapiro's wife.
Yes,
you
I did.
actually you said
Yes,
to Ben
I did.
Shapiro,
Yes, I did.
your wife's a carrot. Well, you're more of a man. Is that what you're trying to
Yes,
say?
I did.
Then you said that Jews have BDSM. You're speaking about sexual lubricants while people are dying. You know, Mohammed, get your head out of the Jewish bedroom. It's really bizarre.
Can we get it?
Let me be clear.
No.
Sexual lubricants? How embarrassing.
You sell dildos.
Can we get it back? Can we get it back to
You sell dildos.
You speak about 5-year-old girls being ready for sex.
Come on,
Listen, let's go back to the issue.
Let me ask a question.
Why are you shaking? I've got a vibrator in your pocket.
Come on, it's a serious debate.
I think he's got one of his daughters vibrating.
Come on, leave it, please.
You are just
It's stupid.
humiliating
We're going to
yourself.
cut all this
Back
stuff.
to the issue.
We'll cut all this stuff
Yeah.
out. So there's no point.
Why? Why
No,
leave it?
cut out.
People should
Uncensored,
see what he
uncensored.
represents.
There's no
It is
point
uncensored.
abusing each other personally.
no,
Okay, Piers.
I want to stick to the debate.
Let's get to the debate.
If you don't want to do it, we'll end the debate.
Let's get to the debate.
Right, let me ask Mohammed a question. Right, I don't disagree with you that so far it seems to me,
Yes.
obviously,
Yes.
a fact that many, many more Palestinian civilians, innocent people, are getting killed as retribution by the Israelis for what happened on October the 7th. That's indisputable, right? Their argument is that they're going after a terror organization, Hamas, and unfortunately in war, as Rabbi Shmuley correctly said about what Churchill did in World War II.
Churchill was wrong.
A lot of
Churchill was wrong.
Was he a war criminal?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Churchill was a war criminal.
Yes, he was.
Well,
Churchill was a war
Were all
criminal.
the British
Let me
people
do
who
the
lived there
Churchill was a war
criminals?
criminal.
Okay.
Let me do
And
the
George
question.
VI was George VI war
All of them
criminal?
war criminals.
Really?
Nagasaki, all of them. Yes, of
So
course.
anyone that,
his
hang on,
parents-
hang
Yes,
on,
war
Rabbi
criminal,
Shmuley.
war criminal, war
Let me ask.
criminal.
So let me get
Absolutely.
this straight. You think
Collective punishment.
You think Winston Churchill
Was a war criminal, yes.
in standing up to the Nazis
By killing the
who
babies.
killed 12 million people?
I believe he was a war
that
criminal.
by doing what he did was a war criminal.
By killing in Dresden and Hamburg.
It's-
By the indiscriminate killing, collective punishment. My morality says that's impossible.
Okay, that means the British people who
That's impossible.
supported him
You can't
and
kill
voted him
children.
in. They were
My
also.
morality says that's
just a second.
impossible.
Just a second.
That's what I
But
believe,
the British
yes.
people.
Yeah.
You believe he was a war criminal?
Yes.
So therefore, your belief is that no retaliatory action.
No,
by
you can
any
retaliate to the man, not to the babies.
Tell me a war in history
Yes.
where civilians haven't been killed.
No, I'm not saying civilians haven't been killed. It's
Just
about this
war
ratio.
or
It's about the
otherwise.
ratio. It's
No,
about
no,
the ratio.
What is the ratio?
What about
What's
the
the
ratio?
ratio?
100 to 1 is unacceptable.
Actually,
What is the
morally,
ra- what is-
100 to 1 is
what is-
unacceptable.
actually, morally,
100 to 1.
okay,
101 is an
100 to 1 is
invention.
hang on, Rabbi Shmuley. So let me give you a ratio.
Yeah.
How many people did the Nazis kill?
I don't know.
You don't
12
know.
million.
how
We know,
many Nazis killed?
we know they killed 6 million
They
Jews in
killed
the
12
Holocaust.
million people.
I don't know. We don't know.
Including
exactly.
6 million Jews.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
So
12 million
how many died in Dresden? How many civilians died in Germany? Do you know?
I don't know exactly.
Right, so you don't actually know what you're talking about.
I do know what I'm talking about because
You
I know in
called
Dresden
Churchill-
and Hamburg.
You said
if
it's
his
about you. Unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, go ahead.
Unless I'm wrong,
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
said it's to do with the
Ratios.
The ratio.
Yes.
But you don't know the ratios. When
No,
you
no,
call,
I know for a fact
You
Dresden
call
and
Winston Churchill
What
a
are the
criminal.
numbers?
Dresden and Hamburg.
What are the
When
numbers?
you-
in
Wait a
Dresden and
minute,
Hamburg?
Rabbi Shmuley. When you
Dresden-
call Winston Churchill a criminal,
Yeah, I believe
you're
a war
basing
criminal.
it on ratios
He's
you
not a
don't
war
even know what they
criminal.
No,
are.
I know for no.
He's not a war
There's difference
criminal.
of opinion among the scholars.
No, there isn't.
There is difference.
Tell us the
Of course.
opinions.
Would
What
you
are
do
they?
that? Would
Tell
you-
us what they are.
Hold on. There's of
How many
course-
in Dresden?
Excuse me. Stop speaking.
How many in Dresden?
Am I speaking to him or
How
you?
many in Dresden?
Whatever the number.
You don't know
if
at
it's
all.
indiscriminate,
Okay.
I'm against it.
No, he doesn't.
That's my
He doesn't.
morality.
Rabbi Shmuley, you respond.
Dresden's about 25,000, and at the time the Germans were saying 250,000. We know it's about 25,000 today. Let me be clear. Winston Churchill was the greatest statesman of the 20th century.
That's
He
an opinion.
saved the world from
I agree.
Nazi terror.
Yeah.
That you could live in a country that is only around today because of the bravery of that man showing no gratitude is the height of
Stick on topic. Stick on topic. Stick on topic.
And to call all the
Stick
British
on
people
topic.
who
Stick on
defeated the
topic.
Nazis,
Stick
who
on
defeated
topic.
the Nazis,
Stick on topic. Stick on
stop
topic.
interrupting me.
Stick
Who
on topic.
defeated the
Please let each other
Nazis,
speak.
war criminals,
Stick on topic.
his parents, all the other
It's
people,
off topic,
war
off
criminals.
topic, off
Let me ask Rabbi Shmuley a
It's
question.
wrong. No. Let me be clear. Let me
Off topic, off topic.
Don't interrupt
let me
each
be
other.
clear. Muhammad Hijab trades in falsehoods. 300 to 1? What are you talking
100
about?
to 1.
And now he
I
says
said 100 to 1.
he says the Jews are about to kill 3 million Palestinians.
I didn't say they're about to. I said
the
if.
fact that this man considers
You don't
himself an
understand.
Oxford academic. I was the rabbi at Oxford University for 11 years. This
Did
is
you
a
graduate from there? Did you
travesty.
graduate from there?
This is a
Let
travesty.
me ask you a question,
graduate from
Rabbi
any
Shmuley.
university?
That
Wait a
he,
minute.
Did you graduate from any university?
I have a rabbinical
Did you
degree.
graduate?
Let me answer.
You're excommunicated.
Doesn't matter if
Well, you're
Let
excommunicated.
me answer.
Right? I swear you're excommunicated from the
I
rabbis.
am a
All right,
rabbinical.
honestly,
Can I speak?
this is pointless.
These guys-
Rabbi Shmuley, is there a
Stop.
limit to the number of civilians in Gaza that Israel can kill to try and
That's a
eliminate
good question.
Hamas?
That's a great question.
Yes, there is.
Thank
the
you,
limit?
but let me ask you.
Not even one. Not one beautiful Palestinian child should have to die because Hamas kicked out Mahmoud
That wasn't my
Abbas.
question.
And not one should have to die. What the answer to your question is that Hamas, if they surrender unconditionally, then
Which they're
all
not
of
gonna
that.
do.
Okay, fine.
But is there a limit?
Then let them allow all the civilians.
Is there a
Israel,
limit?
Israel said that all the civilians can leave. All the civilians should go south. They begged them, and that's something that militaries never do. Churchill did not tell the people in Dresden, "Come on." And you see, you came with all your notes.
We get the point.
I'm not here.
We get the point, Mohammed. I get the point. I get the point.
This is all proof that he can't debate me. So he has to use these
Rabbi-
images. Debate me. We
Rabbi
didn't ask
Shmuley-
you to come on with all your exhibits.
Rabbi Shmuley, let me ask you a question. A member of the cabinet in Israel was actually quoted as saying that nuclear weapons were an option that Israel could use. No one's ever confirmed Israel has nuclear weapons. It's long been suspected. That seemed pretty clear confirmation.
Why are you against nuclear weapons?
Hang on.
If you're not against Dresden, why are you against nuclear weapons?
Let me ask the question.
No, but why are you against it?
I've done this before, this job. Let me do it.
Go on.
Okay? So when that guy says that, if you're living as an innocent civilian in Gaza, what the hell are you thinking? That an Israeli government member threatens the use of a nuclear weapon, which would obliterate pretty much all of Gaza and everyone in it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question. If that were true, why hasn't Israel used nuclear weapons against Nasser when he invaded?
It's true.
Well, hold on.
It's true this guy threatened
it. And the answer is no. I know the guy, and I spoke to him about it. His name is Amichai Eliyahu. Israel has never carpet bombed any Arab.
Hang on, Mohammed.
Ever. Now.
1967 was preemptive.
He was asked a question by a provocative interview, and he said, well, if you're going to bomb the same thing, it was like it was a Mohammed Hijab type. You want to kill all the Arabs, 3 million people, just drop a bomb. He said, well, if you want to drop a bomb, drop a bomb. He was being dismissive and stupid, and he put out a statement the next day saying that never in history would the Jews ever even contemplate doing that. Let's remember one thing. The only place in the Middle East, one second, Pierce, the only place in the Middle East where Arabs have any freedoms, Israel. The only place where they vote openly, Israel. The only place where Palestinian women can dress the way they want, Israel. And let's be clear, when Mohammed Hijab gets up and says that we Palestinians want to be a religion of death, you know, I just got a haircut coming here by an Arab barber here in London, and he said to me, I hope you defeat this guy because he doesn't represent us. We want to live. We want to have good lives. We want to be religious. We want to eat halal. But we don't want to die for martyrdom. You are not a Muslim. You're an Islamist. You're an Islamist.
Let me ask Mohammed a question. Hamas has 240 hostages. Hamas has 240 hostages they took, including babies, young kids, grandmothers who survived the Holocaust. I mean, an unspeakable further criminal act. We can agree, right?
Of course.
Why should Israel agree to any ceasefire so long as those hostages are still being kept hostage?
Look, my position is very clear. They should fight man to man on the ground. On the ground.
Well, they are.
That fighting.
That's exactly what they're doing.
That fighting, no one can. This is
Mohammed, that's exactly what they're doing.
I know.
Man to man, they took hostages.
Excuse me.
They took babies as hostages.
He's asked me the question.
They took infants as hostages.
Let him answer the question.
You're getting excited here. I know it's your sexuals are implying you're the sex rabbi.
Now you're back to my sex
life.
You're getting overexcited.
Leave it,
your head out of my
Mohammed.
bedroom,
Mohammed.
beneath you.
He's getting excited with me.
Let me ask the questions. You guys answer them. Mohammed, answer my question. Why, if you're Israel, would you ever agree to a ceasefire if those hostages aren't released?
I'm telling you what my position is. My position is man-to-man combat.
Which is what they're doing now.
No, that part of it is understandable. Do you understand?
That's what they're doing.
No problem. But what I think is not understandable, what is not acceptable, because you said, what's a proportionate response? That's the question you keep asking everybody. My answer to you is a proportionate response is one where in which the ratios are not 100 to 1.
That's
on the,
your invention.
Excuse me, please.
Where does that come from?
I'll
What's your source?
Okay,
Tell me the source. Tell me the source.
IDF.
The IDF. Yeah, sure. Tell me when did they say it?
They said,
I know all the IDF spokespersons. I know Jonathan
Daniel
Conricus. Daniel Hagari said what? When?
Okay, so let me explain.
No.
Excuse me.
When did he say we're killing Palestinians 100 to 1?
10 days ago, and it's mentioned on a website. I'll tell you
the truth is, they don't.
He never said this is pure fabrication.
Let me finish. You asked me a source.
Which website?
You asked me a source.
Which website?
You asked me a source.
Al Jazeera?
No.
Is it Al Jazeera?
You've asked me a question, right?
Okay.
Are you scared to hear the response?
Go ahead.
Okay, the response is as follows. No. The Guardian has reported that the IDF have said that in terms of the numbers of Hamas that have been killed, I'm answering this question.
I know.
The Hamas that have been killed, they say, quote unquote, dozens. Now listen.
Hamas or civilians? You said civilians.
No,
wait a minute.
You said civilians.
Wait a minute.
I'm telling you where I got the 100 to 1 ratio.
Mohammed.
100 to 1 ratio comes from
the numbers have
invented it.
10,000 civilians.
The numbers
60. It's actually more than 100 to 1.
As soon as you call him out on anything, he has no sources.
No one can hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Let me respond to him.
This is a blood libel.
Let me respond.
The Jews have a right to respond
I'm about
to a blood
question
libel.
him.
It's a blood libel.
Here's the reality. I read that report. That was about at least 2 weeks ago, right?
10 days ago.
The numbers have changed a lot.
Yes, they have.
Israel now believe they've killed a lot more Hamas. We don't know exactly how many, because actually, how do you tell on the ground
By the way, Piers,
to the Hamas fighter and a member of the general population?
Do you know, according to the IDF, and we've done a study on the name that they put on X, they had 1,280 names that they put on X, and according to Haaretz, they put Haaretz is, as you know, is a left-wing newspaper in Israel. They also put the names of those who have been killed. Guess what? According to them, 340 military have been killed, which means Hamas's ratio of combatant to non-combatant is 3-1.
All right.
Imagine Hamas is doing a better job in protecting civilians than Israel. 3-1 versus 100-1.
I would say that Hamas, by what they did on October the 7th,
100-1 versus 3-1.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Ordered by doing what they did, they ordered de facto the disintegration of northern Gaza that we're seeing.
Of course.
And
all the civilians
and the
suffering.
deaths
Have you seen
and the
this?
deaths
Pierce,
of
sure.
thousands
Let him
of
finish,
civilians.
let him finish.
They knew what was going to happen.
I agree with that.
So that's why they should go.
Pierce is not letting
In
any of them get through.
2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza and allowed, Hamas won an election in 2006. They could have built Singapore. You know what they did? They took larger foreign aid per capita than all of Europe received from the Marshall Plan. And look what France and Britain, look how beautiful London is. They took that money and they bought bullets and bombs. They did not build hospitals, not schools. They stole it from the Palestinian people. Ismail Haniyeh is worth $4 billion.
To protect the man. Well, hey, I don't care.
Oh my God, that was just. right, guys. So here we go. That's my chat, I believe. Some Coca-Cola. Yeah. Gonna getcha. Getcha. All right, let's go. No, we're not watching that. 8 hours of freaking. No. All right, guys. Yes, there has been a shooting. I don't really think I'm going to go over any of it. It's not that old. Yeah, Democrats are doing some fishy shit right now. Some fishy shit that really shouldn't be going on, but you know what? Bubbles. I'm going to try to stay away from that. Okay, so this is Trump. What if Trump didn't have any guardrails?
And so here's what I don't have to tell the folks of New Hampshire, because you know it so well, it's part of your DNA. Generations of Americans before us, they fought for freedom and they led the fight for freedom in our country. And now, the baton is in our hands. The baton is in our hands. So let us understand, which we do, our purpose at this very moment. Let us remember the broad shoulders upon which we stand and the traditions of this very fight that have led to what we have been able to accomplish. And let us understand then that when we say fight, it is a fight for something, not against something. It is for something. That's what we're talking about when we talk about a new way forward. This is for something. And so, as an example, let us finally pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. Let us finally pass an assault weapons ban and universal background checks and red flag laws. Because we are clear on that point, it is a false choice to say you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, and I know we need reasonable gun safety laws in our country.
Yeah, we do. But we already have them, though, I thought.
And there's another point that I'd like to stress about this election in 24.
And that would be?
This is not 2016 or 2020. The stakes are even higher this time. For a number of reasons, but I'm going to mention one in particular.
Okay.
What the Supreme Court recently did when they basically just told the former president that going forward, he will effectively be immune no matter what he does in the White House.
Like what you guys are doing?
But let's take this seriously and understand what it means. Before, at least, there might have been the threat that there would be consequence and accountability. With that ruling, what this means is that almost explicitly he has been told no consequence. And imagine, just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails. Just
like what you guys are doing?
No guardrails. He is openly vowed to be a dictator on day one.
I'm just here. I'm just here,
He has
guys.
said he
I'm
would
just
end
here.
The independence of the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice.
Oh my God, you are
So
such.
he could have the unchecked power to seek vengeance against people who disagree.
Who's he
with
seeking
him.
vengeance against?
He even called for, I'm going to quote now, the termination of the Constitution of the United States of America.
He didn't say that. He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
Very clear. Someone who suggests we should terminate the Constitution of the United States of America should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. So I'll end where I started. When it comes down to it, we are all here together because we love our country. We love our country. And we know the privilege and pride that comes with being an American. And I do believe it is one of the highest forms of patriotism to fight for the ideals of our country. That is how we realize the promise of America. And so with that being said, I ask New Hampshire, are you ready to have your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. God bless you.
Joining me now is best-selling author of groundbreaking works, including The War on the West, Douglas Murray. Douglas, I'm keen to get your thoughts on what is happening in Israel, but let's start in the US.
Okay, this is the thing they're talking about right now. That's what she was talking about. Trump denies he suggested terminating without deleting post. On Truth Social on Saturday, he repeats false claims about election fraud, which he has allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. So he never said he was going to terminate the Constitution. They're upset because he did what he did. See, yeah, former President Trump on Monday denies he wanted to terminate the Constitution 2 days after suggesting the termination of all rules, even those found in the Constitution. The fake news is actually trying to convince them that I said I wanted to terminate the Constitution. This is simply more disinformation and lies, Trump said on Monday on his own social media platform, Truth Social. The posts seemed to be a complete denial of his post from Saturday, which reminded online as of Monday afternoon a mass fraud of this type and allows for the termination of all rules, regulation, articles, those found in the country. Trump wrote over the weekend once again, falsely asserted that there was widespread fraud in the. That's all he's saying is that there was widespread. He feels that there was widespread. Oh my God! Widespread fraud. I mean, it's his opinion. He can have his opinion. Several of Trump's followers were critical of the post, but few condemned Trump himself or said it would be disqualifying for him to earn their vote, a lack of representation that has drawn criticism from Democrats. The post came less than a month after Trump officially declared his plan to run for president again in 2024, and he remains the only major Republican candidate to announce a campaign. This says Trump says he didn't mean to say it or didn't say it, but his post on Saturday seems to reiterate that he still believes that there was fraud in the election of the 2020 fraud election. He still feels, and all he was saying is that what happened in 2020, he's saying that it's allowing it to stand that there was no fraud or fraud that allows the termination of the laws. It's his opinion. It's his opinion. That's the truth. That's the truth. It's his complete opinion. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, that's so fucking wrong, man. That's so fucking wrong, bro." But again, it's his opinion. It's his opinion. He can have his opinion if he wants to.
You wrote last week in the New York Post about Kamala and co deserving an Oscar, and she's really taking your advice on board. We've had different accents from Kamala before, but this may be the first time we've had two in a single day.
Person in our nation has benefited from that work. You know, everywhere I go, I tell people, you may not be a union member, but you better thank unions for that 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
What happened to authentic?
That's different. See, the reason, I don't know, the reason why she did it, maybe because she did it because of the fact that she's in different spots of the country.
Authenticity, Douglas. Kamala in Pittsburgh sounds very different to Kamala in Detroit.
Yes, Kamala is following in some very noble footsteps here, of course. Hillary Clinton was a great purveyor of different accents depending on the part of America she was in. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, Congresswoman, Democrat Congresswoman, is also a fine one for if she's speaking to, for instance, a majority black church, she will go into a special register and put on an entirely new voice. So Kamala is doing something that's tried and tested. But you're right, Rita. It does not look authentic. It looks horribly pandering. It's just another example of the fact that America is trying to work out who this politician is, and they're not really getting an answer.
No. Now, you've written about some of the mad far-left Democrat policies being implemented in California. The Biden-Harris administration has had record numbers of illegal immigrants coming in every year of their administration, literally millions, and the Democrats refuse to take the sugar off the table. Indeed, they seem to be adding more inducements, including benefits that are not available to citizens, like a taxpayer-funded home loan program. Tell me about this and what is the rationale behind it?
It's amazing. The Democrats in California voted for, and now put before Governor Newsom, a proposal that illegal migrants in California could be given up to $150,000 of taxpayer money to get them onto the housing ladder. Now, this is the sort of madness that really can only happen in California. But of course, if Californian politicians keep on dominating in the US as a whole, maybe we will see it rolled out elsewhere. But I think
it might. Seriously,
it's another
that's a
example
thought right
of
there.
crazy far left politics. And of
That's
course,
funny.
it's the sort of thing which, I don't know, if, for instance, everyone who had paid taxes and worked in America was already happily on the housing ladder, and there was no unhappiness in the world or in the country, and everyone lived in exactly the house they wanted, I suppose this is the sort of lunatic proposal that you could come up with. But that isn't the case. Ordinary Americans, working Americans, are struggling to pay bills, to pay mortgages, to catch up with the unbelievable consequences of inflation in recent years. And now they're meant to also subsidize people and give money to people through the tax
That's what they're
system
trying to do, yeah.
to people who've broken the most basic rule, which is they've broken into the country. And I mean, you know, you always expect this lunacy is going to stop at some point, and that it'll stop when you just run out of money. But the thing is that it seems that the Democrats in California and perhaps wider afield in the US don't think that they ever will run out of money. They think they'll never run out of the taxpayers' money. We'll see if that Californianomics actually works. I would suggest that it won't.
I like that.
But it'll cause an unbelievable amount of misery when the rubber actually hits the road.
Yes, it will.
Now to Israel, where there are tens of thousands protesting, demanding a Gaza ceasefire and the release of the remaining hostages after 6 were executed by Hamas. And the pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu is intensifying further, Douglas, with President Joe Biden saying the Israeli Prime Minister is not doing enough to secure a hostage deal and ceasefire with Hamas. Is Israel's most important ally wavering in their support at this most crucial time?
Well, you know, Joe Biden has spent recent weeks
He's on the beach sleeping, man.
Literally on
Leave
the
him
beach,
alone,
away
brother.
on the beach.
Yeah, man,
with,
leave him alone,
Dr. Jill.
brother.
And so when he says that Prime Minister Netanyahu isn't doing enough, I'd love to know exactly what Joe Biden thinks his own work performance schedule has been like of late. And it isn't a theoretical question, that. One of the 6 hostages murdered by Hamas in the last week was an American citizen. And there used to be a time, Rita, and you and I remember it, when an American citizen being killed in cold blood by a terrorist group got the attention of the president and indeed perhaps even the vice president.
Yeah, when we
But
go
the
and
president is on the beach. The vice president is on the campaign trail, studiously avoiding having to answer any questions from the media or indeed say anything of any substance. And this, I think, is a little glimpse into what happens in the world when America is absent. And I think it's shameful, shameful.
It very
American
much is.
politicians should have ignored the American hostages for such a long time, played political football with the Israeli hostages, and now pretend that the Israeli government is the one not doing enough. You know, the hostages are not in Benjamin Netanyahu's basement. They're in tunnels underneath Gaza, built by Hamas with Western taxpayers' money. And Hamas are the people who stole these people from their homes. Hamas are the people who have kept them underground for almost a year now. Hamas are the ones that have started summarily executing the hostages. And it is a sign of such pusillanimity as well as weakness that President Biden should think at that point that the person he should put pressure on is the Prime Minister of Israel. It's absolutely preposterous, a demonstration of weakness, because perhaps he knows that he has absolutely no say over Hamas. And again, there was a time when American presidents actually did have something to say about terrorist groups who murder their own citizens and the citizens of their friends and allies.
Meanwhile, we've got the Labor government in Britain shocking Israel and I think Brits alike by banning the sale of certain weaponry, including jet and drone parts. Foreign Secretary David Lammy stunned MPs with a decision said to stem from, and I quote here, pressure which Labor MPs have found in their seats as a result of pro-Gaza protests. Douglas, are Labor really allowing the mad mobs in the streets to set the nation's foreign policy?
Oh, you bet. I mean, David Lammy and Keir Starmer have shown double and triple standards just in recent days alone. Last week, Keir Starmer said that Britain would back Ukraine with giving them whatever was needed. That was the quote, whatever was needed for Ukraine to prosecute its war against Russia after the illegal invasion of Ukraine. At the same time as saying that they will give Ukraine whatever they need. And by the way, Britain is not going to give Ukraine everything it needs. Britain can't give Ukraine everything it needs. But that's what he says. Meantime, he's not even willing to sell the Israelis the things that they need to prosecute their war against Hamas. And that is for one reason alone. There is no sort of pro-Russian basis in the Labour Party that just would love to defend Russia. But there is a base within the Labour Party now, sadly, of people who think that you should just allow Hamas to win.
Ban them all!
Allow
Ban
the
them all!
Palestinian extremists to win and for Israel to lose in this conflict. And, you know, what David Lammy has done is not just unbelievably treacherous to an ally, as the Speaker of the Knesset in Israel said a couple of days ago, citing Churchill's famous criticism of Chamberlain. Britain had a choice between war and dishonor, and it chose dishonor this week. But you know, this arms sale change, this partial boycott by the British, will have no meaningful impact on the war, but it will have a meaningful impact on Britain. Britain relies very considerably in much of its arms and security apparatus on Israeli intelligence and Israeli technology. I wonder, and I hope that they don't, but I wonder if the Israelis would like to play this game back at David Lammy. He will see in the coming days that his cowardly little move, appeasing this nasty little bigoted rump within his party, will please absolutely nobody. Because you know what, Rita? The Hamas wing of the Labour Party are not going to be content with a little bit of boycott of Israel. They want a total boycott of Israel because they want the destruction of Israel. Well, David Lammy will, again, to quote a famous line about appeasement, be feeding the crocodile in the hope that it'll eat him last. But it won't.
Beautifully said, and yeah, Churchill had it right all those years ago, and the decision is certainly causing a diplomatic row with Benjamin Netanyahu. He's called it shameful and said it's going to embolden Hamas, and I think you're right. I think it is going to put at risk that relationship where Israel provides so much support and intelligence about attacks that may be being planned on UK soil. So it just seems to be a bonkers move any way you look at it. Before you go, we know the Labor MPs have their priorities right these days. Have a look at this clip of Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, Lisa Nandy, talking about doing something about the high prices of Oasis tickets. I wish I was joking.
I don't know what conversations Oasis had about ticket pricing, but I do know that it's deeply depressing to have had this incredible moment where so many people, especially at my age, were incredibly excited that this event of a lifetime that they thought may never happen was happening, only to find that they had to queue for hours in a queue, and for many of them to find that when they got to the front of that queue they couldn't actually afford the tickets that were on offer. We think as a government that there's an overhaul needed of the regulations around ticketing.
I mean, there's all sorts of issues in that country: cost of living, energy crisis, knife crime. I could go on, but they're focusing on dynamic pricing for Oasis tickets. Douglas, what's your response to that?
I mean, everything else in Britain is clearly hunky-dory if a minister can focus on the length of time people have to queue and the fact that some people at the end of a queue feel sad. Of course, only somebody like Lisa Nandy would think that government needs to step in. Nobody in Britain will be free until we all have the right to not queue for any time at all and buy cheap tickets to Oasis reunion concerts. I think you and I can agree on that, Rita. It's a fundamental issue of human rights. We should all have everything we want as soon as we want it. And if we don't, then we need government to step in, because the government, particularly this Labour government, has proved so superb at dealing with all problems. So they should definitely step into the realm of policing queuing in the same way they police our opinions, what we can say online, what we can retweet. I think the next step is obviously tackling the great injustice of Oasis ticketing. And I'm delighted myself that Lisa Nandy has decided to step in, and I'm sure she'll make a really meaningful difference. And in time, she can also make sure that any concert tickets I want, I don't particularly want to hear Oasis, but if any tickets I want, I think I can get them straight away very cheaply. And I expect the Culture Secretary to really step in and help me in that noble endeavour.
And I also don't like queuing up either, or waiting on lines. No. I would hope she would do something about that. Maybe a ticket seller per customer. That way we can just walk right up to the window, no lines. And maybe Liam and Noel Gallagher could be arrested. I don't think everyone else is being arrested in the UK. I don't see why those two should be exempt. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored, he's one of the most fearless and fascinating thinkers on the planet. Provocative polemicist, best-selling author, world-leading scientist. Richard Dawkins, one-on-one.
Richard Dodson.
From London, this is Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Good evening from London. Welcome to a special edition of Piers Morgan Uncensored. I'll go head-to-head tonight with one of the most influential intellectuals there is. He's one of the most controversial thinkers on the planet. Biologist, controversialist, world-famous atheist.
You should be able to talk about whatever you want to talk about and have an exchange of ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. It doesn't work that way. When you put out something that is at odds with the agenda is intolerant when you're dealing with these activists.
Well, that's exactly what Dr. Phil has done. And this time, he's not holding back. Dr. Phil, the American author and television personality we all know for letting others have their say, has had enough of this woke madness. But now he's the one doing the talking, and the woke crowd is losing it. Phil's not just concerned. He's calling out the dangers of expressing any opinion that goes against the woke agenda.
You know, you see somebody that says something on Twitter or says something in an interview that is offensive to some group, and all of a sudden you start reading the messages they get. It's like, I hope you get ass cancer and die, you son of a bitch. I'll cut your throat. I'll come to your house and kill your children. Are you kidding me?
But the woke agenda doesn't just punish those who disagree. It's controlling and manipulative, and Phil is shocked by how far it has gone. He's especially disturbed by the lengths to which woke culture has gone to cancel even the most harmless words and phrases from the English language. But of all these phrases, one of them confuses Phil the most.
And I'm just curious, some of these maybe are obvious, but if you know why some of these are on the list now.
Mom and dad, I see why that would be up there.
So why would mom and dad be up there?
Why is mom and dad suddenly on the don't say list? From a neutral perspective, one may think that the phrase mom and dad is so ordinary. But wait till you see why woke people have canceled the phrase. This woke couple offers an explanation.
Because they're idiots.
I have a daughter with another woman, and when it's being taught in school that, that's just the norm, that it's just mom and dad, it kind of offends us because we are lesbians. You know what I mean? We
Who
come
cares?
From the
Who cares?
community,
I'm
and
not
it
going to
makes
sit
us
here and
feel
judge
like
you.
We're not important enough to be called mom or parents.
See how this woke person is saying that using the term mom and dad doesn't sit well with her because she's married to a woman? This is what Phil means when he talks about the woke agenda. He believes it's almost impossible to keep up with because it defies common sense and logic. But beyond that, there's something deeply unsettling about how woke culture demands that you change your behavior just to make others feel better. So it's no wonder he asked this critical question.
So should I stop saying that?
No, not
because you're mom and mom?
Now, if she stopped there, no one would blame her. But she doesn't. She goes further to hint that saying mom and dad makes her feel left out, and so we should all just say parents instead. It's almost as if when people's feelings get hurt, the world has to pay for it. But here's the thing. According to Phil, he's fine with saying mom and mom. But if his experience and that of other people is growing up with a conventional mom and dad, why is it on the don't say list? Dr. Phil sees this as yet another example of how woke culture doesn't just express opinions, but imposes them, forcing their experiences and emotions onto everyone around them. They create rules on what you should say and how you should interact. And if you go against that law, you're canceled. And speaking of being canceled,
It's the stupidest
cancel
thing in the
culture
world.
is just another issue
It's
for
the
Phil.
stupidest thing in
But
the
we'll talk
world.
about that in a moment. What Phil just can't understand is how aggressively
Why?
woke people react when someone says something they find offensive.
See somebody that says something on Twitter or says something in an interview that is offensive to some group, and all of a sudden you start reading the messages they get. It's like, I hope you get ass cancer and die, you son of a bitch. I'll cut your throat. I'll come to your house and kill your children. Are you kidding me?
It seems like the level of anger and hate against people who don't agree with woke ideas is almost like they've been victims of a hate crime. And Phil just can't wrap his head around that. But back to the cancel culture. Phil, being the solution-oriented person his brand has been built upon, he offers an alternative solution to cancel culture.
It should be counsel culture, not cancel culture. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let me educate you. Maybe you don't understand. Maybe when you do, you won't agree, but let's talk about this.
Counsel culture versus cancel culture. Phil's got a strong opinion on this one. He thinks wiping someone out just because they don't see eye to eye with you is taking things way too far. Instead, he's all about having a real conversation, where you actually talk things out and maybe even learn something from each other. It is no secret that Phil has been all about communication when it comes to opposing ideas. As a matter of fact, he even believes it is the most progressive way to go about the disagreements between the left and the right, because this is what it would lead to.
Yeah, if you get the left and the right and talk about what we agree on, everybody would agree. We want America to be the number one country in the world. We want to be the leading superpower, the leading educational power, the leading in technology, everything, right? Everybody would agree to that.
This is interesting because according to Phil, we need to realize that in the end, whether you're on the left or right, there are common interests we all share. Phil even says it's perfectly okay to disagree, but what's absolutely ridiculous is that there's often no chance to hear the other side out and find some middle ground. Most Americans might point fingers at the government for restricting their freedom or rights. And that's exactly what Phil's next statement really drives home.
We have the First Amendment protecting free speech, and we're muzzling each other. It's not the government coming in and taking it away. Right? It's now we're muzzling each other.
Phil believes that simply disagreeing with woke beliefs can get you labeled as a hater, a misogynist, and could even cost you your job and social media presence. To him, this is the very definition of disregarding free speech and stripping away others' rights, while claiming to fight for your own. According to Phil, this is not only hypocritical, but also packed with unfair double standards. And now, Phil has a message for all Americans.
I'm trying to get people to examine themselves and get back to the core values that they really hold near and dear, and not give too much attention to the loudest voice.
The loudest voices Phil is talking about here are the woke crowd. He believes they're a minority group themselves, and they get loud and disrespectful just to grab attention. But why shouldn't people pay attention to them? Well, according to Phil, the answer is simple.
The loudest voice oftentimes is the shrill, fringe voices that are trying to rewrite history, biology, science, economies, all of these sort of things that they have no basis for what they're peddling. It's just that's how they want it to be. Well, that's not how it is.
Just because you want something to be a certain way doesn't mean it magically becomes that way, especially when what you're trying to change goes against the majority's experience and preference. Phil is urging everyone to return to common sense and logic. He insists he's not trying to take a political side. He's just focused on what's real. And it seems like the reality of things, especially when it comes to gender, has not only become complicated, but also controlling. But don't just take my word for it. Listen to what this 5th grade teacher on Phil's show had to say. People who hate the truth are because they see the truth as hateful. If you want to identify in any way you can, you're free to do so. But that does not mean that the rest of us have to join that illusion. You disagree, I disagree with you, and so you call it hate. In a nutshell, this highlights one of the biggest issues with woke culture. Throughout history, people have always disagreed. But what's different now is that woke folks don't just disagree. They demand that everyone else falls in line with their views. According to Phil, to justify beliefs that aren't backed by science or facts, they come up with new words and practices. One of these practices is the use of trigger warnings on university campuses.
I saw a couple of universities are using trigger warnings for Romeo and Juliet, where they say, trigger warning, suicide content. Well, spoiler alert.
Phil believes this is dangerous because it's where the coddling of feelings and emotions in the younger generation begins. He's especially appalled that these campuses are using trigger warnings for almost everything, even school plays. But what Phil says next is where things really get interesting.
Research trigger warnings, and you will find that the vast majority, overwhelming body of literature says trigger warnings not only don't work,
make you weaker.
They actually make you anxious. They actually create the problem that they were designed to avoid.
So, why are these campuses still pushing trigger warnings even when research shows they don't work? Phil's got a bold answer to that.
If I can look that up and find it, so can every university that's employing them. So why are they doing it anyway? Because they're virtue signaling. They're wanting to seem like I am super woke here. I'm really sensitive. I'm protecting all of the students and creating a safe place for them to get an education.
But that's not what real education is about, Phil argues. Trigger warnings actually end up creating more anxiety, and they send the message that students' comfort should always come first. The problem is, when these students graduate and face the real world, they'll find out that life isn't always comfortable. That's why Phil is so concerned about this practice. Phil also thinks that, aside from virtue signaling, woke folks seem more interested in controlling the narrative than having real conversations. Instead of encouraging open discussions, woke culture often shuts them down, pushing everyone to conform instead of thinking for themselves. And that's what really bothers Phil. It puts ideology over education and leaves no room for different perspectives. But aside from virtue signaling, Phil also believes this about woke people.
And so many of these people that jump on the bandwagon, they don't even know what they're talking about. They just see somebody jumping on somebody's ass and they go, hey, this is great. This will be fun.
Pile on.
Yeah. And they don't even know what they're talking about.
So what do you think about all these? Is it true that woke people simply jump on a bandwagon just for a sense of belonging? Or is there some truth to how they feel? Let us know in the comments and subscribe. Left. And they agree, and they know it. Because it doesn't matter about the 40% of the people that hate Trump or the 40% of the people that don't want her to be president. She's already got those votes. He's got those votes. That 20% in the 7 swing states, that's everything. And everybody knows you can't tell people in Pennsylvania they can't have rifles. That's a hunting culture there. You can't tell a state like that there's no more fracking. It's an energy state. You can't tell southern states you're going to have an open border policy.
If you guys know, there's a massive feud going on between Brazil and their Supreme Court Justice, their Alexandre de Moraes. Here's what's going on here. So here's a Guardian. I'm going to read a few of them for you, and then we'll go open up and talk about this. X goes offline in Brazil after Elon Musk's refusal to comply with local laws. Okay, so Elon is saying, Brazil, screw you. We're going to do whatever we're going to do here. X, formerly known as Twitter, was blocked in Brazil after Elon Musk refused to comply with local laws, leading the country's Supreme Court to...
All right, guys, I'm actually going to go. I'm going to go eat. Justin made orange chicken. Love you guys. I'll be up tomorrow. I'll let you guys know. X, Brian Lovecraft 420. Watch there. Also TikTok, Mr. Lovecraft 420. TikTok, tic-tac, tic-tac, tic-toc, tick-tick-tick-tick-tick-tick. Tick-tick-tick-tick. All right, guys. You guys take care and have a beautiful day. I will see you later, alligator.